Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of the Dealership Fix It podcast. I've got a very special guest today, Mike Murray from NPA, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to go over some of the market reports, and Mike's going to give his perspective on what he's seeing at the auction here. So, Mike, welcome to the podcast. Hopefully we get this off, kicked off on a good foot here on this first one here, but we're going to do this kind of semi-monthly and kind of do a consistent reporting here of what the NPA is really kind of telling us about the trends in the market here. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. I always appreciate being able to spend time and chat with you and hopefully share some information with the industry about what we are seeing in the market and how they can use this information to benefit themselves.
Absolutely. Let's roll into it. So I'm looking at the December 2025 NPA market report. And one of the first things that I saw on there is we are officially hitting the floor. So Mike, the report kind of talks about finding the floor before the spring thaw. Are we actually there, and has wholesale pricing kind of bottomed out in most major segments? Tell me a little bit about that.
Great question. Yes, we were there. We are not there anymore. We were there. So being that we are in February, and hopefully everybody will still get to hear this while we're in February, you'll see that auction pricing has ticked up several points from what we saw in December. The seasonality curve really has tracked what we say normally, removing any of the COVID effects out of those things from the last 5, 10, 15 years. And so we did see those low points happen. And we really see two low points during the year. It's kind of interesting. August, September, some of the product models mixes tend to see a low point, which makes a lot of sense. A lot of you dealers are very seasonal. And when you get to August, you're a little more hesitant on things you're paying up for at the auction, and you realize that your season is definitely on the downhill slide as it wraps up and you start preparing for fall. And then once we get into the fall and even winter, a lot of times November, December, kind of that Thanksgiving to Christmas time period. That's also, a lot of dealerships are sometimes scaling back hours, sometimes days. A lot of dealerships are just not as aggressive on the inventory as we see it. So that's kind of the double dip that we see in a lot of product categories. And that second dip that we saw in December was right on par with that. And predictably, at least by our math and all of our data, we see from those December prices a fairly steady increase through January and now into February even. And we still see that going as far as an average wholesale pricing or even a price to book number. If you look at the anticipation and prediction is that will continue to climb as we get into that April, May time period, which is when things tend to level off. All things being predictable and equal, which we hope they are.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you kind of mentioned in your report here about going from defense to offense, right? So as spring starts to thaw and we've got some open weather here for riding, dealers are starting to load up on the bikes. Let's see, you mentioned that the market is transitioning. Dealers are listening right now. So kind of tell us maybe what you mean by offense. What does that look like? What kind of bikes should these guys be looking for?
So I think that's a great deal. I had the privilege to sit in with the 20 group in January, and by offense, I think it's the idea that waiting for trades to come into your store and being defensive about, well, we should take it, versus being more on the offense, going, here's what we need, here's a plan. Having an offensive strategy in the pre-owned space really speaks to the fact that you're going to do something besides wait for that trade-in to show up at your doorstep, or someone to walk in the door and say, hey, what can I sell you this motorcycle? Going out and looking at them. Obviously, we love when guys come to the auction. The auction is going to teach anybody a lot about the current true wholesale values. You'll see things sell above and below, JD Power book prices at the auction. Unfortunately, JD Power does not set the market. They attempt to predict it. They attempt to rationalize or normalize it. Your markets will vary. What you see happen at the auction level is, hey, you will see at any one of our auctions, dealers from 12 to 25 states potentially participating, and they all have a little bit different market that may or may not align with whatever a book value is. And so, going on offense is really about understanding the potential of your market and then going after it. hey, you might find out that brand X and Model Y, you know what? Those things are really strong in our market. And you know what? Guys that want to buy those are going to require $1,000, $1,500 extra down payment because financing them is tough, but this is what they're worth. And the flip side of that, you might find out that you do really well with brand P or model X, 2 or whatever it is, and go, hey, guess what? NADA might have those undervalued or overvalued in our market. They sell for less and we can buy them for less at the auction. So really taking an interest and understanding what the opportunity is and not waiting it for it to develop is a key factor. And that's something that not only we see on a big scale, but we're seeing more folks in the 20 clubs talk about, hey, this year I'm actually going to invest $150,000, $200,000 into my pre-owned line, right? It's an additional line in the store and actually continue to develop that out, not just have it exist in their store.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I like how you guys kind of do the bar charts here for trends in a 3 month or prior year. One thing that kind of stood out to me is the domestic and metric cruisers were actually down year over year, but they were up versus the trailing last 90 days. And of course, this is December's report, right? We'll get into
Yeah,
January here in a minute. But
sure.
is that stabilization in the cruiser, metric, and domestic line? I mean, is that confidence in that segment? Are they selling better? What can you tell from that data moving into spring?
So my opinion is although they look similar, I think they're both doing things for different reasons. I think the Harley dealers looking at the end of last year still had a pretty good um, question mark hanging over their brand and what to do and where to go. I think a lot of things have firmed up in the last 60 days. And so I think there's a much higher degree of optimism in the Harley-Davidson world than there is today. On the Metric Cruiser side, I think they're limited by the amount of product that's out there. There's not a whole lot of Metric Cruisers being made like there once was. So barely that long ago where gosh, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda. I mean, I don't know how many different cruiser type bikes they made that were, 3 different models of the same bike. I mean, Honda had
Yep.
like 12 different models of the same bike. I mean, it was crazy. Well, that's narrowed down to the degree where, there's many fewer options than there once was. And I think that's driven some of that price stability and even some of that optimism in the market. I know a lot of dealers find that those Japanese cruisers are an excellent entry level motorcycle, and they're comfortable for people to get on. They're low seat height, reliable, all the things that somebody needs if they're getting into the sport. And I think we've seen those prices. They kind of leveled off last year a little bit, but we've seen them increase already this year because of that springtime optimism and that fresh rider, or maybe somebody is upgrading from something smaller to some of those medium or even heavier weight metric or even Harley branded cruisers.
Yeah. Let's switch gears to sport bikes now, right? So, the domestic cruisers, I agree with you so much. I mean, there used to be so many, and it seems like it's a drying pool. And maybe most of the manufacturers in the last several years have been going to more of a sport or adventure model. But I saw sport bikes; they took about a 3% drop compared to the prior time this year. Is that also a demand issue, supply issue? What do you think that dip means in the sport bike segment?
Uh, but I think that's been an overweighted price point on the wholesale level for us. I can imagine there's a whole lot of dealers that are with shaking their, nodding their head right now, going, "Yeah, you can't buy sport bikes at NPA." Well, that's not true. You can, but it's a very demanding price point, and there are not enough good used sport bikes in the world. So to your earlier question, why did that price drop 3 points? Well, I think that was a correct correction. I think that was an appropriate correction for that time of year. I think we had seen some really hot prices going through. And I think that's actually a good thing if those prices, even the sport bike prices, come down a little bit, because I think it's more appropriate for where that market is. Now, I will tell you that I will easily bet that as we get into the next 3 or 4 months, that those prices are going to shoot back up. That when we get into that hotter part of the market, and sport bikes are selling like crazy, that the pre-owned prices are going to get pulled back up again. And that little dip we saw was just a normal correction for the time of year. And we might very well see some of those higher than average or higher than comfortable prices on the wholesale.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, when we talk about MX, these are your off-road dirt bike motorcycles, they saw the largest increase, not only in the last 3 months at 5%, but in the year over year change, 12%. That was the biggest segment of the average wholesale pricing change. What do you think you attribute the MX market to be doing right now?
So one of the challenges that MX has in the pricing normalcy is that the condition and the volume fluctuate tons. We saw some Mm, when we see the cleaner product, they tend to do better. When we see the rougher product, it tends to do worse. And some of that stuff is not really borne out in this math. And we try to normalize it as much as we can, but we still have to take the data as it comes because it is the raw data. That's one of the things that we try to do is actually present the data as it is without manipulating it. And so when
Yeah,
we do stuff like that, we do look and go, hey, what was our average condition? What these things really look like? And so a lot of that MX fluctuation can be because we just saw some really, really clean product or some product that was a little rougher than usual, or we didn't see very much of it. That
yeah,
space on the auction side has shrunk. It hasn't shrunk as much as the ATVs. There was a time when we were selling, 300 ATVs, in every auction all month long, which was equated to thousands a month. Motocross bikes specifically, I think they've hit their plateau of shrinkage, that it has not gone down to the small level as ATVs has, but it is a smaller pool. It's also heavily influenced by some of the manufacturer programs that are out there right now. A couple of the
mm,
companies did some really big rebates, and so that made sense if you were looking for, brand A, B, or C, and then you pair that as far as with, hey, what's the quality, what's the time of year, what's those other things, and all of those things will affect that pricing more than, oh my gosh, they're red hot or they're dead. Well, there's probably three or four more factors in that probably have more weight than everybody's in or everybody's out on them. So that's one thing with MX that we see a lot. It's a smaller pool and it tends to be more fickle on the pricing.
yeah.
So
With the condition, yeah,
mhm,
yeah. That's
yeah,
that's interesting that you say that. I think someone might assume that maybe these are, uh, you know, COVID era type dirt bike purchases, and maybe they're getting out of the sport altogether because they bought it in 2020,
yeah,
2021, whatever. They just wanted something to do, and this was all that was available. And a couple years later, they're either trading it in for something a little bit more economical or side by side for their family, or they're just getting out of the sport altogether.
yeah.
So
It,
yeah, nice,
it's
clean, unused stuff on the MX side.
the dealer reports for me are that many of those COVID purchases have been clean for 6 to 12 months. I think that buyer's remorse or that buyer's realization of utilization, hey, look, I was going to use this every weekend and I've used it twice in 2 years.
Yep.
Many dealers have reported that that's died off a lot, right? We had the big influx, which was like everybody's buried in their stuff and wants me to buy it from them, and they paid COVID pricing and things went for a premium. It's the way it was, and boy, that went away in 23, 24. So a lot of that stuff is cleaned up. We are seeing the side by side still trickle in that way, though. I think those got hung on to a little bit longer by some of the people that bought them,
Yeah.
and so we're seeing some of those trickle through into dealer trades as well.
Okay. Well, let's talk about side by sides. They've been, continued on pressure, right? Especially if you're a new side by side dealer, and maybe they're heavy in some of those segments, new or pre owned, in the different sport or utility side by side market. What are you seeing right now for the side by sides? Because that's continually a big growing piece of our industry right now.
It's an incredible part of our industry. I may have mentioned this, but I'll hit it again. One of the things that we scratched our head years ago on was why are we not seeing more of them? It was the late teens, 18, 19, 20, when you looked at I'll just pick Polaris and Can-Am out. When you looked at their retail sales volumes, they were crazy. And then you got into 2021, 22, and they sold everything they could make, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And so we're finally seeing that stuff make its way back into dealers. I know a lot of dealers, they're a pain to take in on trade. There's so many things to be wrong with them, right? You really got to get them up on a lift. You really got to inspect them. Where can you test ride them and find out what's right, what's wrong? So it is a harder part of a trade in for a lot of dealers, but a lot of
Hmm.
dealers are figuring that out. And I will go back to our earlier question. That's a little bit more on the offense. They're not taking in just the easy trades. They're realizing, hey, you know what? If I'm going to take in this X3 or this Razor Pro 4R or whatever else, hey, it looks pretty clean, but I got to check this thing out, and it's not just as simple as a two-wheel motorcycle where, hey, let's get on it, let's listen to it, let's check the brakes, a few things, and it feels pretty tight. Hey, there's a lot of things. I got to test the four-wheel drive. I got to put it in reverse. I got to make sure the clutch stays engaged or feels like it engages correctly, which means I got to have space to do this or have somebody that's capable of doing it. So it's a little more complex. But the good news is dealers are figuring that out, and we're seeing more of those come in through dealers on trades, even if they're not something they want to retail. Maybe it's not a brand they want to retail. Maybe the condition is something they don't want to retail. Maybe it's a price point, one of those, super crazy, 40, 50, $60,000 done up rigs that's, hey, I can take it in on trade, but it's going to NPA because there's a stronger market than I have for that. So it's been great to see
Yeah.
dealers take those in. The side by side prices, when you look at our charts, they're bumpy. They kind of move around a lot, but they're generally stable. There's not a lot of spikes and dips in there, which is good as that market continues to kind of find its way. And have heard some very good things from the big manufacturers on those. That inventory levels are those complaints and concerns by dealers have been heard, and that they're working with a lot of dealers to make sure they get the inventory levels right, which is going to keep them more healthy on the new, which is going to continue to also sustain used values. So I think the used market with ATVs has a long way to go in our industry.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. One more question, then we'll get into the January 2026 stuff.
Sure.
This report says, quote, used is still benefiting from value-driven customers. So the report basically mentions the discretionary spending is tight, but the used sales are benefiting from these value-driven buyers. Do you think that this is going to be more of a used first market in the early months of 2026, even with a lot of these OEM incentives that are pushing the new units right now, or it's kind of 50-50?
So the dealers that I've talked to that are in Sunshine States and that are, having good transactional volume right now, used is already doing well for them. There are lots of people that are very dollar conscious, and we got a few new brands on the scene like CF Moto that does offer some pretty value minded options. A few of the other brands are
Mhm.
kind of getting there as well, realizing that, but it's nothing like a $4 or $5 or $6,000 used sport bike cruiser, maybe a $10,000 used Harley Fat Boy, something like that. That value proposition is never going away. So the way I guess I would answer that question is, I don't know that it's used first, but I think that used additional line or that opportunity to gain a customer by advertising used or letting them know that you're in the business of selling motorcycles, new and used, that should be the first priority. Customers will buy what you offer them, what you put them on, what you close them on, the value proposition you bring to them. If you don't have that used value proposition, that's going to be a tougher sell for you.
Agree. Yeah. And it has to do with so many levels of your marketing as well, having these different types of models that you may not otherwise carry as part of something that is visible online, customers can find, and, they obviously trickles into your newer brands as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about January 2026 now. The market report is not officially published yet, but you have a little preview of what you can give us a taste of what happened in January leading into February now.
Absolutely. I do. And one of the things that I've looked at is that year over year average sale price, specifically with metric cruisers. So what I did is I said, hey, show me the stuff that's 2 to 14 years old, 0 to 25,000 miles, and is on the cleaner side of our condition report, nothing below a 76. What does this look like for 2026 as well as the prior 3 years? So 23, 24, 25, and 26. And to the earlier comments, in 2026, we saw the average price of these types of metric bikes. They were metric cruisers, dual sport, and sport bikes, which are our three biggest segments of the metric space. So in 2025, the average sale price for the auction was about 6,400 or so. 2024, it was like 6,200 and change. And this year we peaked 6,500. It was about 65, 6,600 was the average sale price in January. So we've seen that increase in demand. And again, these are the same comparisons year over year over year. So it's good. And in all 3 years compared, and I don't have any of February's data in here yet, but it goes from whatever that starting price point is this year in that 65, 60 to 65, 6,600 spot. I anticipate that'll kick up a couple of percentages here, at least through March or April, before we start to see it level off. So the takeaway is, if you're looking for this type of product and you're not able to source it locally, you're not seeing it on trades, you're not seeing it for sale in your local marketplace where you can buy it, Definitely jump on with us sooner rather than later because it will cost more the following month.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a little self-serving, but I think the question is how aggressive should dealers be at auction right now with either
Yeah.
buying or selling their non-desirable product?
And I completely understand that, and that's why I start with local market, right? And that's something that you'll always hear from us. Hey, you should be buying every bike off the street, every trade-in you can take, all of those things. If you're getting 100% of your inventory from NPA, I promise you're doing it wrong. As much as I appreciate it, you are missing opportunity that is right there. And I don't know if that means that you need, better advertising, better salespeople, better desk managers. I don't know, but there is so much product out there. One of the numbers we throw around all the time is the on-road registrations in the United States is approximately 12 million, right? That's on-road. And there's, I don't know, a dozen states or more that don't even register off-road, plus all
Yeah.
that other stuff. So, I mean, there's literally millions of motorcycles out there that can be obtained. The difference is you don't always get to pick and choose. We have that selection that allows you to say, hey, we need some black R6s, we need some red R1s, whatever happens to be. That's where NPA fits that bill, so that you can take advantage of the opportunity that your customers are looking to spend money with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see all the auctions that you guys run and all of your individual run lists at each one. It's clean stuff for the most part. And that's kind of what the best part that I see from a dealer's perspective is that it's a trustworthy source. You guys score it, you guys inspect it, and you list any mechanical issues or any title issues. But you can really buy in bulk. If a dealer, like you said, wants to deploy 150 to 200K for a good, strong used bike strategy starting in the spring, there's no better place to pick up 10, 20 bikes in one place and have a showroom filled within a week or
Right.
two. So yeah, it really works out in the benefit of the dealer. Okay.
Filling the needs is the important part there. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. All right. What else you got for the January 2026? Anything else stand out to you in that report? Side by sides, ATV?
So, look, one of the things we also look at is we look at, hey, what is the price doing against the original, MSRP, right? Kind of a little depreciation check. And again, looking at this similar data here, 23, 24, 25, and 26 January, pretty interesting. We saw back in 23, January 23 was still a very, very strong market. And looking at one of the charts I'm looking at right now, just on the cruiser domestic side, you know, back in 23, the 2 to 14-year-old bikes were still only depreciating about 45% from new. And then in 24 and 25, we saw them dip below 50%. In 26, we're just above 50%. So the interesting part of this is it's not so much a book value or an average sale price, but it's, hey, we know MSRPs have changed. We know the world's a different place than it was. What happens? Where is that value proposition if you're looking for a new bike? And it's strengthened from the last 2 years, which I think is a good thing. I think that's a good indicator, not only for our dealers that selling pre-owned makes sense, but also selling new makes sense. And again, it's kind of that separate department. Hey, you might like Honda, you might like Kawasaki. It's okay. I'm going to offer them both to you. Hey, you might want new, you might not like used. That's okay. I'm going to offer them both to you because these two things are very symbiotic in the dealership. And it's a good thing when we see that price to MSRP is even up a little bit than it was a couple years ago. That indicates more stability in the pre-owned, which should build confidence not only in the dealers but in the customers as well to know that, hey, if I am buying a new bike, well, I'm going to have some depreciation, and here it's predictable. But also, if I'm buying a used bike, hey, look at my value proposition. I'm saving, 40 some odd percent, 50 some odd percent, maybe off a new one, and the next part of the depreciation is not nearly going to be that good. And maybe this is where I want to start to make sure I enjoy this Ford, or then work my way up to a bike that I really want or something I might have to stretch for.
Yeah, let's double click on that a little bit. That's an interesting stat. You're saying that you're looking at 2 to 14-year-old bikes under 20,000 miles above a 70 CR score, I think is what you said. But in
Yeah, this one's a
2024,
little bit different. Yeah, this is a little bit different. Let me get this chart up here so I make sure I got all my data in front of me here. My screen's not behaving. There we go. Yes.
no
So
problem,
so how much these things depreciated?
versus
In
MSRP.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so a 2023 model, if we're in 2026, right? Just to be
Yep.
fair on the model year, you're saying that in the last 2 years, it was a 50% depreciation. It MSRP's at say 20,000 to make it easy. It is now at a $10,000 value.
For rough math, absolutely, to where those things came through there. Yes. Yeah. One of those, basically, that we look at what was the MSRP, and then what does it go through at the auction here as well in that same time period. And these ones were, again, I've got sport bikes up for me right now. And I've also looked at the Harley-Davidson market as well. And that's right. You see them drop off. We all know that as soon as you drive it off the lot, definitely you can see a pretty big group. These are an average depreciation over these model age as well. So it's a bigger swath of data in here just to try to understand the bigger trend. When you do it year by year by year, it gets a little bit noisier, especially month by month. But we do grab a bulk of years in there just to try to see what that trend looks like and understand what's happening in the market. Sometimes our dealers have 2 to 14-year-old pre-owned products. So what does that stuff really look like, and what did it do from that new MSRP?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Okay, so what does that actually tell us about the market? And is it a good thing that it's, not 50%, it's actually gone down or up, however you look at it, to the 46% or 45%?
Yeah, it's so we saw some of the biggest dips post COVID, right? So 23 is one of those years where in the early part of 23, looking at sport bikes, looking at Harley Davidsons, looking at pretty much everything, the depreciation was tiny. But as the year went on, it dropped, as we saw pretty much average sale price do, and even auction prices, wholesale prices, everything dropped right at the end of 23.
Yeah.
What's good to see is that here on the front part of 26 today, we are in that 50, 60% retention of value, depending on the make, model, brand, a few things like that. And it hasn't gone down. It hasn't dropped anymore. It stayed a little bit more consistent. And so, to my earlier point, that's to me the positive aspect, is that pre-owned is becoming more and more accepted and more recognized as that additional brand in the dealership. And when we see those pre-owned values depreciate massively, if it takes these 60 and 70% hits, wow, that's rough. That puts people upside down. That makes it hard to do trade-ins. That makes financing used hard. That creates all these other things. So seeing that stability is a good thing. It builds confidence to banks. These are the types of things some of the financial and lending institutions look at, so that they can understand, hey, what's happening? If we're financing new motorcycles, side by sides, whatever it is, and this thing does go belly up in 2, 3, 4 years, what is our retention value? What are we likely to see here? Is this going to be a profitable loan for us? All those types of things. And so seeing this stability and these slightly higher retention of values is a good thing for the industry and the market.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, cool. Super interesting stuff. All right, let's talk about dual sport for a moment. This has been a segment in the motorcycle area that has been on fire the last couple of years, at least on the new side. It seems like every year another manufacturer is entering in a different CC style adventure bike, or they've got a brand new one altogether. How are you seeing the wholesale buying side for these pre-owned adventure bikes looking so far?
To clarification for us, those dual sport and adventure bikes, they're such a big segment, and you said it perfectly. You have, some entry level stuff. The Himalayan, which you can get, $5,000-$6,000, and then you've got your BMWs, KTM's, Ducatis that are tipping the scales at, I don't know, $25,000-$30,000. So it's a wide range. The one thing I will say about the adventure bike segment is that under $10,000 stuff seems to be really predictable, slower depreciation, those types of things. Those more premium bikes, Ducatis and the BMWs, the Triumphs, even the KTMs, they are very mileage sensitive when it comes to retention of value. When we see, a KTM, whether it's an 1190, 1290, 1390, whatever model we're on right now, if they've got under 10,000 miles, same thing with BMW GS, whatever it is. If it's under 10,000 miles, they do pretty well. When you start getting towards 15, 20, or 25,000 miles, the values come down just massively. Thousands and thousands of dollars. And I think that's one area that I think dealers could get better at understanding, their trade-in opportunity when they're explaining to somebody that, hey, I know you just paid, I would say just that a year ago, you might have paid $1,000 for this really cool adventure bike, and you rode it all over the place, and you managed to rack up 17,000 miles. And, book might say it's an $18,000 bike, But the reality is it's a $14,000 bike with those miles, you know, and it's an opportunity, you know, to put my retail hat back on for a minute. That's an opportunity to go, holy smokes, yeah, you put a ton of miles on this. That's what you bought it for, is to get that enjoyment. Well, one of the parts of getting that enjoyment is it's lowered the value. You've used some of that enjoyment value out of it, and man, if you never rode it, I probably could have given you 20 grand, right? But you rode it, you got the enjoyment. So unfortunately, you know, the next guy's not going to pay more than 15 or 16 grand. And so understanding that value difference when it comes to the mileage that these things rack up is a big part that I think dealers could get better at. And it's a booming market. Everybody knows it. They're fun. I ride a Tiger 900. It's the most fun bike that I've ever ridden on the street. And I don't spend enough time on the dirt, but I love it on the street because there's not a pothole or a speed bump or a curb that I'm not afraid to go find out. Let's go. You know, and it's just, you can't do that on a sport bike. You can't do it on a cruiser. And it's just more fun. Love being upright, love seeing the traffic. You know, it's just more maneuverable for me. And so it's understandable why that segment is growing. It's a lot of fun. But on the flip side of that, when you do run the miles up, the values do come down pretty quickly, especially on the more premium models.
Yeah, they seem to fall off of a cliff. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Let's talk about the PWC and the marine market now, right? This is obviously a summertime sport that the PWC and the marine guys get into. But right now, while we're still kind of cold in a lot of our northern states, we saw a huge decrease, at least the December report that I'm looking at. Share with us the January findings for the PWC and marine. But is this a season right now to where we should be buying because the wholesale values are lower in terms of stocking up for the spring and summertime?
Absolutely. And we're already seeing the values turn. So you know, there's a particular boat we had in San Diego. You know, sometimes vehicles, boats, PWCs, whatever, will go through more than one of our auctions. And we had a boat, a nice wakeboard boat, go through the auction in San Diego. You know, roughly $110,000 book, you know, just to give you an idea, just a nice late model wakeboard boat. And in December, it didn't sell. And I think maybe the bidding got to $90,000 or $95,000. I don't remember exactly, but I know it did sell in January, and I looked and it sold for like $112,000. So we've already seen that turn in the market. A month, a year makes a big difference. And again, I say a year, that flipping of the calendar from December to January makes a lot of difference, I think, mentally for a lot of buyers, that, hey, this is the time that I need to get ready for this. Now, that was in San Diego. And San Diego, I mean, you know, it's cold here today. It's like 59. Sorry for all you guys that don't live in this type of place. But we have had 80-degree days. And so, you know, if someone's looking for that type of boat, that boat can be usable in a lot of markets nearly year round. If you are in one of those seasonal markets you talked about, then yes, if you want to visit our Portland or Sacramento or Denver or Cincinnati or Philadelphia auctions where the weather is less friendly, this would be the best time to look after that type of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's kind of go through that one by one. If you were running a multi-line power sports dealership or even a Harley dealership going into spring, it's 2026. We've got the commitment. We're going to make pre-owned a priority in our dealership. We're going to profit on it. What type of segments right now are you buying, Mike Murray, GM of XYZ Power Sports? What segments are you cautious on? And what type of pricing philosophy should you hold walking into March?
Imagining that I am in Southern California, since that is where I am and I know this market the best, I would say that there is a massive need for a price point. I would say that, you know, half my inventory needs to be under $10,000 retail price. I need to figure out how to find that type of product that is under that. And I also don't want anything above $10,000. I probably don't want anything over 15. That above that is probably going to be capped out in the $15,000 range. And I think there's a lot of product mix out there that makes sense. You know, when I visit stores and I see what someone has in their pre-owned, it always, if you're a predominantly metric or metric only store and you have a couple of Harleys on your floor, people notice that. Have a street glide, have a fat boy, have something that stands out, you know, because people will notice that. Like, oh, wow, I didn't think they took those. And the same thing is true for my Harley dealers. Hey, have a couple of metric used bikes in your lineup. That's a great advertisement that we take off brand trades. Something that I just brought up here recently with one of the 20 groups was, hey, if I stood on your doorstep, do I unequivocally know that you take trade-ins? If I just was about to walk in your door, do I not know that you take trade-ins? And I saw like 7 dealers write notes. I'm like, you 7, right? They're like, yep, we have not done the job we could do to make sure that we know we take trade-ins, all make, all models. So having that brand differentiation on your floor, I think, is huge. That's something I would absolutely have if I'm playing this out as you suggested. Um, the metric cruisers, the metric sport bikes, absolutely positively. And then again, a mix of some Harley Davidsons. If I can get some Sportsters, if I can get maybe, a road glide or a street glide or something that's maybe a little bit older, but has some shine to it and looks kind of cool. I think that draws eyeballs, and I think that draws people's attention to be like, hey, what if? You know what? I know somebody looking for one of these. Those types of things. I've heard so many stories about people that have sold things off referral because that product was in front of somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great idea. I love it. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, so I'm right there with you on all of these points. But let's flip that on its head and go, hey, I'm in New England, right? I'm in New York, I'm in Wisconsin. Maybe side by sides or
Yeah.
ATVs are a little bit more my bread and butter versus the on-road motorcycle stuff. What would you say for those guys?
I think what you just said was perfect. I think that's understanding your market mix and what people are looking for. I know one of the largest used motorcycle dealers is in Wisconsin, and they have no problem selling hundreds of used bikes, all makes, all models, everything else. And that's a developed market. That's something that they started that business with a handful, and grew it to what it is today. And I've seen other dealers do similar things in that part of the country. So I don't think it's as limited. Yeah, there's a shorter sales window, but a lot of times that shorter sales window is a busier window. A lot of times, and I have dealer friends in Minnesota and Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, all those types of places that do get real winter. But boy, when it hits, people are raring to go, and they do really, really well. So, having that same product mix of those bikes that are available to get someone started in that $5,000 to $10,000 range, having a few nicer bikes is huge. I think the used side by side market is still underdeveloped. I don't think it's untapped. I just think it's underdeveloped. And I know that they are a pain in the butt to service, and they take up space and all those other things. But if you do live in one of those states where, hey, you know what, having an extra acre or two really doesn't cost me that much money. I can store the side by sides here. I can put up a metal building. I can service these things. There's a lot of money to be made on those too. Side by sides need service. They need repairs, and people are willing to pay for it. So, to your point, being in one of those states, being in that situation, I would be more aggressive on understanding what the used side by side potential is there, because those do go a little bit beyond the season. You can put a windshield and some other stuff on them, and hey, we can go through some inclement weather. If it ends up being some of the more utility style things that actually have, you can put heat in them or AC or whatever else you want. Hey, you can now run this thing maybe 9 months a year, maybe even 12 months a year, depending on where you're going. So that opportunity exists if the dealers are willing to research it, invest in it.
That's a great point. Yeah. Putting new parts on a used machine, like a cab system, windshield, doors, all that. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, man. Well, that's all the questions I had for you today. I know that you had just recently went to a 20 group. You did a great presentation. Anything else from that you want to share on this episode here?
I just think that with the way the industry continues to move forward, I'm excited for it. The other thing I did recently is I went to the NADA, which is the National Automotive Dealer Association trade show in Las Vegas. And a lot of people in our industry here talk about us being, however many years, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years behind the automotive industry. Part of that I see, but the other part of it, which is why I got out of the automotive industry 18 years ago, is that they are not driven by the passion and the enthusiasm that we have in our industry.
Mm.
And so that, to me, is why our industry still has more fun. Why we still do this is because it's a good time to enjoy these types of toys. In that industry, they could be selling widgets, they could be selling furniture, they could be selling anything. It doesn't matter to them. They're just selling stuff. For us, we get to sell a lifestyle. We get to sell entertainment, enjoyment. We ride things that put smiles on our face, that blow our hair back, literally all those types of things. And so, when I look at our industry with a set group of people I spent an entire day with, and then went to the largest automotive convention in North America and saw how people acted and reacted and what they were excited about, two totally different things. It makes me thankful to be in this industry. People like you that continue to help drive the industry, and then all the 20 clubs out there with people trying to help each other get better and just run better businesses so that we can continue to grow this industry in this country. Are all the things that I would comment on for what I've seen this calendar year so far.
I love that. Great observation. Yeah, it's two totally different worlds for sure. You know, you can't get excited about a Toyota Corolla the same way that you get excited about a, Harley Streetglide or something like that,
Right. Right.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I think that's the perfect way to end our little segment here. Short, quick, to the point. This was our December and January 26th, December 2025 market update with Mike Murray from NPA. Mike, how can people get a hold of you if they need more details?
You can find me on the NPA website. You can hit me an email, npauctions.com. So it's mmurray@npauctions.com. Drop me an email if you have a question. You can find me on LinkedIn, all those other places. You can hit up Jacob. He knows where to track me down. But happy to answer any questions or anything else you need.
All right, cool. Well, on that note, we'll say thanks, Mike. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dealers, get ready to accelerate your sales with MotoHunt Marketplace. For a limited time, we're offering a free trial to powersports and motorcycle dealers to showcase your inventory where it matters most. MotoHunt isn't just a platform. With our unparalleled Google-esque search technology, your listings climb to the top of page results, capturing the attention of motivated buyers without the need for a bidding war. We'll send direct, qualified leads straight to your CRM or inbox. Get more visibility on your in-stock units and convert more sales is what MotoHunt Marketplace offers. Your inventory deserves the spotlight, and with MotoHunt, that's exactly where it'll be. Sign up today for free. Visit dealers.motohunt.com/free. That's dealers.motohunt.com/free. That's FREE to claim your free trial today.